I have a story that I promised you this week, and it's a story about my job loss. And I definitely want to share that with you today, but I want you to understand how I arrived at that point. I mean, yes, in the prior video, I told you about the foundations of my career path and went through that in as much detail as I could, but um, I need for you to understand like what was at stake. I showed you where I went, but I want you to understand like what I gained and what I brought with me. Because every role that I had, every position, I took something away from that. It wasn't like I just worked there and then that was the end and I moved on. Um, I took those experiences and brought them with me. So stay tuned and let's talk about my job loss story. The first job that I had, which I explained to you, was Grant County Deposit Bank. That kind of is what got me into the financial world, and um, I kind of landed that into that role through a co-op program at my high school. And I did learn a lot of things there. Not only did I learn about operations, but I also kind of started learning about people. And one of the big things I took away from that role was that if you want people to work with you, if you want them to do business with you, they have to trust you first. So the biggest thing that I took away from that role was that if if I want people to work with me, if I want customers to do business with me, then I have to build that trust with them. So that was a very valuable tool. It definitely was a good start to the foundation of my career. And I probably really didn't realize it at that time, but it's probably really what set me up for customer service. Um, so that what I learned there at that bank, that's something that no textbook's going to show you. I mean, you might read about it, you might read use cases, that kind of thing, but you're really not going to gain that skill or that experience without having a job that allows you to do that. So, like I said, I did have a small role or another job that I took with a larger bank as I moved north, but I would say that where I was really forged into my future, the company that started that was Fidelity Investments. And, when I worked there for 7 years. And while I worked there, I did 3 different roles as I continued to grow in my career development there. But, when I was the participant service representative, that was really the, the front line role with customer service. I mean, yeah, sometimes it was just your boring old transaction, but sometimes customers were very upset. Sometimes customers needed to be educated. So I learned a lot of different things by taking those phone calls, and not every call was the same. You didn't really know what you were going to get. It might have started out as a balance inquiry, but then they start asking more questions, and you start realizing, oh, they need to be educated. They don't understand how this mutual fund works, or they don't understand investments. So that was definitely an experience that I put in my back pocket. I did that for about a little over 2 years, about 2.5 years, and I transferred to the customer research and resolution position. And when I was in that role, um, that's kind of where I mean, that role is exactly what it says, research and resolution. So you are researching a problem or what someone might think is a problem, and you are trying to resolve that, come to a conclusion. Sometimes it was an error, sometimes an error on our company's part, maybe when they were speaking with someone on the phone, they didn't understand, or it might be an error on the customer's part because they thought they were doing one thing, but come to find out, they might have gave the wrong code or talked about the wrong fund. So they thought they were doing the right thing, but then when they saw the results of the transaction, they're like, nope, that's not what I meant to do. So a little bit of education occurred there also, but um, I really got to learn even deeper the back end part of investing, like what that looks like, how you make things balance, and uh, how they um, come to the pricing of that mutual fund. So a lot of nitty gritty work there. It also taught me how to give bad news to people, but in the best way possible. Um, and it also taught me how to give feedback because I would start seeing trends and we would make recommendations that maybe there need to be more training on this XYZ problem, so that it wouldn't happen in the future. So sometimes you were recognizing problems, identifying problems that where more training needed to be done. Sometimes that training might have just been with a small group of people. Sometimes it was company wide, like, okay, this is something that could happen to anyone. Yes, it happened to this person, but it could have happened to anybody on the floor. So that would prompt, some company wide training. After I did that role, I moved into the technical solutions team, and that role kind of combined all of my roles. And whenever a client would come on board, they would run a test file for like contributions for people that were participating in a 401k. And if that file did not come over correctly, we had to identify why. We had to, it could be a system issue on their end. It could be the file itself, like maybe the file was corrupted in some way or not written correctly, or it wasn't put together the way that when we give them the guidelines, maybe they didn't follow all the guidelines and they missed something, they didn't check it for errors. So that was a unique role. That was a very new role for them at that time. I have no idea what that looks like nowadays. I know that team eventually kind of dissolved, and I think it got absorbed by another department. But conducting research on participants' accounts, identifying trends, giving accurate resolutions, all of those things definitely I could not have learned in a textbook. Um, Being a trusted advisor with relationships with our clients, because when I was in the participant services role, I also would do like tours on our floor when clients would come to visit us, so that they could see, like, when your customer or employees participate in this plan, this is what they experience. These are the people that your employees are talking to. So they got to see like our operations and how that worked, and that was pretty cool. They also would give feedback, like if there were things we weren't doing well, they would bring those up, and I would communicate that back to, if it was something specific to our team, I'd communicate it with our team. Otherwise, I would pass it on to other liaisons that were on the floor, and they would pass that information on to their team, and we would put that in training documents also. So when employees called in, it would pop up on the screen, and it would give you like bullet points of things that you need to remember when talking to participants in this plan. So that was pretty cool. I was recognized for world-class service on more than one occasion. The one thing that they didn't hesitate to do, Fidelity did not hesitate to recognize people for doing the right thing, and even like just doing your job well. Even those that made a good effort at doing their job well, they would get recognized also. But I was recognized for world-class service on more than one occasion, which was a higher award, not something you can learn in a textbook. It was just from experience. It was from making a lot of mistakes, but it was also from doing a lot of things the right way and getting that positive feedback. But also being able to receive feedback so that I could, when I would go to do the next thing, or go to do it the next time, I could do it better. So you really have to, if you're going to provide world-class customer service, you got to be able to accept feedback, whether it's good or bad. But Fidelity, it didn't just teach me about financial services. It taught me how to serve people at even the highest level, because when you're dealing with clients of multi-million-dollar companies, that's not something that they're just going to allow anyone to do. You're not just going to let anyone talk to a client, especially if maybe the client relationship is maybe a little rocky. Maybe we've made some pretty big mistakes, and they're coming on site to try to get it rectified, to figure out what's going on. So you want to have your best foot forward, and you want to make sure that you have the right people talking to those customers, and making sure that you're doing the right thing. So as far as I mentioned that I managed a large portfolio. It was more than $10 million at ABC Mechanical Company. That's what we're going to refer to it in this video. Don't remember if I referred to it as that name in the other video, but that's what we're going to call it in this video. And part of the reason I was able to do that was because of what I learned here at Fidelity. Now, the whole thing at ABC Mechanical didn't come until much later down the road. I had other positions in between that time. So, but still, I was able to put that in my backpack, put it in my back pocket, take it with me to my next job, and just continue to build up on that. Now, I did tell you I was called into ministry, and I started doing student ministry. I definitely learned a lot doing that. But while I was doing student ministry, I also worked for the school district. And then sometimes in the summer, I would work for the YMCA, and I had different roles there, in different summer programs. But, doing student ministry, doing the YMCA, it wasn't just a summer job. The student ministry wasn't just a volunteer gig. I took that very seriously. A lot of things that I learned when I was at Fidelity, I also applied to my job with the Y, and even the job that I had at the church that I was attending, where I was the student minister. So, being in some of the roles that I was in with the YMCA, I worked with a lot of the summer staff and did a lot of training with them. Ministry, the things I learned in ministry, I was able to apply also to that job. And a lot of those skills didn't just apply, within the church. I used those skills outside the church as a minister. So one of the big things, I did is reduction in wages or wage expenses, I should say. Um, it was a little, but a little goes a long way in the end. So whether it was at the church or the Y, I wasn't just running programs. I wasn't just leading groups. I wasn't just doing mission trips. I know that I was investing in people because I cared about the people that I was training. I cared about the people I was responsible for. I cared about the people that I worked with in ministry. Um, I cared very much about those things because even Fidelity taught me that it's always people first. So, and of course, growing in Christ, people are always first. Love God, love people. So what I did, what I did at Fidelity, it carried over into the roles that I had in ministry, the summer jobs that I had. Whether it is client trust, service standards, training, and just showing up with excellence. Those are all things that I brought from Fidelity and carried them into ministry and also carried them into my summer jobs. Now, even in doing those the ministry role and the Y role, I was also working in education. I actually did that for 15 years. And I did multiple roles within the school district, everything from, like I said before, instructional assistant to school secretary to janitorial to eventually driving a bus. Did many things within that school district, and once again, the skills that I had learned at Fidelity, the skills that I learned in ministry, very much applied to my years in education. And there were times with the school district that the things that I learned in ministry applied much, much more than things that I did at Fidelity. But there were just small skills, people skills that I learned at Fidelity and dealing with tough situations that I was able to carry into the school system. And, whenever there were situations, being able to de-escalate and just dealing with people on multiple levels. I mean, you're dealing with students, you're dealing with families, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. You're dealing with administration, so whether it's teachers or principals, and then then you have the board of education, so that's another level of people that work at the board, answering to them and giving them updates when requested. And then eventually, when I was in the bus driver or trainer role, dealing with people on a state level, so once again, dealing with multi-level, something I also did at Fidelity, I was able to bring to the education role. When I was at the school district, I was also able to use the people first leadership in the program building, but I feel like they did even put in more concrete, I mean, along with ministry and everything too, but I think when I was in education, that it showed me that I was serving with purpose. You're affecting people's future. But, at ABC Mechanical is really where everything came together. I was hired to just do quotes. I shouldn't say just do quotes, because quotes is a big part of their business. That's how you get business. You give people a quote and they say, yes, come and do the work. There were changes there, and they needed someone to head up the national accounts No one really stepped up to the plate and did it, but I knew that that was a big part of the business. I immediately stepped up to the challenge, and I just did it. I said, this is what needs to be done, and this is how I'm going to handle it, and this is what I'm going to do. I wasn't afraid. Like, I showed up, and I figured it out. Now, eventually, I moved on into a role where I've managed more of the data and created dashboards using Microsoft Power BI and Domo. Once again, did not receive any direction on any of those things, and I didn't go to school, traditional school, to learn those things. I actually took an online course to become a data analyst and get certified in data analytics and R programming, and also at that time learned about SQL and how to use it. I took those skills, and after our company, the really cool thing about ABC Mechanical was that it was originally owned by a guy that was a Christian. And like I said in my prior video, that getting that job really made the connection, and the whole testimony thing, not really all the certifications or anything I could prove on paper. So when they sold, it was different. The one thing that I learned from the original owner was that if you take care of the people, then you don't have to worry about the dollars. And it was true. So, while I was at ABC Mechanical, I wasn't really drawing on a degree or a piece of paper. It was all about 25 years of showing up and saying yes and figuring it out. So that's not a resume. That is a toolbox built from one difficult experience or hard experience to another. Just taking things step by step, one at a time, learning from those experiences, knowing what you're going to change the next time for the things that maybe didn't work so well, and then making sure that you do it better the next time that you have an opportunity. So every promotion, every new role that I had, every project, you had to prove yourself first. When the degree question would come up, I was able to talk about how I did have 2 years of college, but I never hesitated to say that I did not get a degree. I didn't even get an associate's degree. And that was simply because the courses that I took in those 2 years just did not add up to any type of degree that they had. And I learned what I needed to learn. Like, I went there specifically for ministry to learn a few certain things that I felt like that I did not have a lot of experience in. So I went there basically to learn how to do ministry, the foundations of ministry, how to research things in my Bible. So anyways, the degree thing, that's really how I handled it. And I was not afraid to say that I didn't have a degree. I wasn't afraid to say that school was not my favorite thing. I really didn't. I didn't enjoy that, and I had no desire to go to school for 4 more years. So I made it pretty clear. I made it known, how I felt about that. But I did stop apologizing for what I didn't have, and I simply started leading with what I did have. And if you're someone who's actually building something without that credential, the thing that I can simply say is keep building, because your backpack, it's filling up. Whether you realize it or not, all of those experiences it all adds up, and it will help you with whatever is next. So looking back, I can see how God like put me into each role and each spot. And there was a reason and a purpose for that, and it did me very well throughout my career. And things seemed to flow one into another, even when some things ended and I had to move on or find other work. Just one thing built upon another. I don't believe that that was by accident. I believe that it was by design, and it was just each stop was preparation for the next stop. So, reminding you that whatever you've been through, it's not wasted. Nothing that I've learned over all these years, none of it's been wasted. It does give me a different outlook for my future. I do plan on taking those experiences and applying it to whatever that next thing is. And you will too. You'll need every bit of it. Everything you've learned, you'll need it. It doesn't matter if you're completely changing into a different role, those experiences will count more than your paper, whatever you have on paper. So let's talk about the whole reason for this video, and that was the job loss. So at ABC Mechanical, everything just kind of ended abruptly. I kind of saw, I felt like things got to a point to where I'm like, things don't look good. But I kept telling myself that wasn't true. I have a lot of value. I know a lot of things. People still came to me for questions, trying to get answers. But, whatever the reason, they didn't feel that my position was needed any longer. And I came in one morning with a job, and I left that afternoon. Actually, it was by noon, without a job. And I was angry at first, had a lot of emotions, but there was a part of me that I knew that my health was being destroyed, and I really needed a break. And this break, which it's been a very long break, I would love for it to continue, but we got bills to pay, right? But I have seen a significant improvement in my health. I have much more mental clarity, and that job loss, which some people would find a lot of anxiety with, I actually saw it as a blessing, and it was an answered prayer. I believe that God does have something even better. I don't know what the next steps are, but I know that God knows, and that's the only thing that's important, and that's what I'm going to continue to focus on. So let's talk about the next video. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion today. I hope that you realize that all of your experiences will count more than the paper. And I hope that if you're seeking a job with another employer, I hope that they find that to be true. I think that that's something that we cannot communicate enough, especially at Gen X, is that we have a lot of experience that no one will ever be able to learn in a classroom. They'll never get that experience by having a piece of paper. When I got hired at Fidelity, like I said in my video, there were a lot of people in that room sitting around me that had degrees, and I did not have a degree. And I was like, I think I'm in the wrong place. But you know what? I wasn't in the wrong place. Met a lot of great people there, a lot of great coworkers, and there's a handful that I still keep in contact with to this day. But let's talk about the next video, because it's going to be pretty cool. I'm going to talk about my favorite job, the best job I ever had. And if you listen real closely in the first video, you might know what that job is. But if not, you just stay tuned because I promise it's worth the wait. I'm just going to tell you up front that the video might be a little messy. You might want to bring some tissues because every time I talk about this job, I love it so much that I can't hardly talk about it. So I'm hoping that I keep myself together so that I can tell you about my favorite job because it was the best job ever. The other thing that you can do in this video to keep it going so that other people can hear the story, maybe it will encourage them, is subscribe, like the video, hit the like button below. But also, it would be really cool if you could drop a comment with what's in your backpack. What is that? What are those things that's in your backpack that you have taken with you to every job, and it was not something that you could have ever learned in a classroom? I would love to see those skills. I would love to hear about those experiences. So be sure to comment below. Until next time, my name is Dwayne, and you make it a great day.